I did my student teaching at McClure Health Science High School, teaching media literacy and American Lit. Today I'll be talking to you about student-centered teaching and how I implemented rigor in the student-centered teaching. Alright, so what I'll be going through, I'll be sharing when I first thought about student-centered teaching, and give examples from the poetry unit I did, the Lord of the Flies unit that I did, and the mini research unit that I did at the end of the semester. I'll also be talking about the challenges I had implementing rigor, as well as the benefits of implementing this rigor in the classroom and what I want to do moving forward. All right, so as we all know, but just to refresh, according to Teaching Excellence in Adult Literacy Center, student-centered teaching is when learners choose not only what to study, but how and why, in contrast to instructor control and coverage of content. I would say student choice is a very important aspect of my teaching, but the issue I ran into was implementing rigor amidst the student choice. All right, in the beginning of the semester, I had students come up with a list of rules that they want to see in the classroom, let them create Spotify playlists, and they also had a lot of choice in terms of topics for projects that they were going to do. And all these student choices aren't negative, but we also are preparing students for the wider world after college, so there needs to be some sort of rigor added to these. Why am I student-centered, but how could I expect more? I wanted students to really like and enjoy my class because they had a lot of choice, and I thought that if they enjoyed my class, then they'd be more willing to be more engaged in the class, but this wasn't always the case. It was the case for some students, but not all of them. So this poetry unit, I was able to help students make a connection, I thought, to music as a form of poetry, and students wrote creative poems for their final projects. And this is a student example of the final project with the example that was creative, so it was a student choice. But I think it's important to have a rubric and high expectations set for students who struggle in school or don't care about poetry and need more structure and help. So what would I have done differently for this unit? Like I mentioned, I would have a specific rubric to follow. This was the rubric or the general guidelines I gave them, but I would have a more specific rubric to follow just so I could really give them more extensive feedback. In the future, I'd also like to have students read the poems, maybe at home, just so we could talk in more depth in class. So this Lord of the Flies unit was probably the most difficult unit that I had, just because it was really difficult for them to get them to actually read the stories or read the story at home, just because they weren't used to that and being conditioned to do some of that reading at home. So it was really hard to get into the analysis of the text. So I do think there were things that went well in this unit. I did help bring some different perspectives to the text through different critical literary lenses. And I created more specific guidelines in this unit as well for the final project. So they had to pick a character that they thought should run for president of the island. So this is an example of one of the final projects, along with, they wrote an argumentative paper about it. So what would I have done differently? Well, I'll go into challenges of implementing rigor. I got like some pushback from students in terms of implementing rigor, just because they didn't like it, and so they really didn't have like a fun time with it. So that was one of my biggest challenges. But I would say the rewards for it were that satisfaction in knowing that I know that I'm going to be helping them in the wider world beyond high school, because we don't always get the choices that we want all the time after school. So looking forward, I really do enjoy student choice, but I want to in the future create more detailed rubrics when applicable, and set high expectations in the beginning of the school year, because that's what I had trouble with with the Lord of the Flies unit is that I didn't really set the high expectations in the beginning. I was very chill teacher, and that's okay, but it was hard to implement more rigor and have students do things at home. And then I want to stay in contact with parents more and make very deliberate decisions about student choice to help them be the most successful students that they can be.